What is up, fellow gaming enthusiasts? My name is Kevin, and welcome to Critical Overthinking, the BeyondPolygons podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Fire Emblem Three Houses, because one of the things we talk about the least on this podcast is video games. So we also talk about like the life of YouTube and like my opinions and how they change as time goes on, because that is going to be part of the discussion today. Because on top of playing Fire Emblem Three Houses, I'm going to be talking about what makes a Fire Emblem game a Fire Emblem game, and how I think Three Houses needs to like live up to them at the same time. And I want to kind of use this whole episode to try and really discuss how each Fire Emblem game has played out, to me at least, and how I use it to gauge what I think of other Fire Emblem games, because I still think Fire Emblem 7 is the best Fire Emblem game, and I'll mention it along the way. So anyway, I figure as part of reviewing Fire Emblem Three Houses, or previewing rather, getting excited for it, I figured what makes the most sense is to, well, compare it to other Fire Emblem games, and rather than digging into everything about the trailer, because in reality, the sad thing is no one cares about the story in Fire Emblem, but you need to make sure it has like enough reason to do things. We'll get to it. There's a couple notes though I do want to say. First off, this is episode 10 of the podcast, so thanks. It's hard to believe, to be honest. That's dark. Speaking of, though, I got some comments talking about my mental health, and I do appreciate it. I'm in a good place. Like, I don't think I'm a bad person by any means, and in terms of like being violent towards myself, I've never really done it to an extreme, I don't think. So anyway, I did write a little note here though that part of life is figuring out where we fit, and it's important to understand that the vast majority of people, we're all just confused about life like everyone else, and we're trying to figure it out. And this is why I watch a lot of comedians, because I feel like they really look at the world and have to put it all in perspective, and they have to kind of be like, this is what I see, this is how I interpret it. Do y'all agree? And the sad thing is we have to start to understand that we all agree with each other on a lot of things, and sometimes it's not everything. But 100% of the time it is not going to be everything, and we need to understand this. Anyway, on to Fire Emblem Three Houses. Politics aside, which Fire Emblem is always full of it. To get stuff out of the way, to all the meme lords out there who are going to talk about, it's just waifus, we're going to be dating our teacher now. It's hilarious. I love it. Obviously, I don't want that. The issue is like, I don't want Fire Emblem to just always be classified as that now. That's the problem. I've been thinking about what this whole YouTube channel is supposed to be, and if there's a person in the world I've been looking up to the most recently, it's Kenny Omega, the professional wrestler. His whole mantra is change the world. And much in the way he's been changing the world of professional wrestling, and why I think a lot more people should be tuning in for the stuff that's really cool. I just think his mantra of changing the world is something that you need to take with you everywhere you go. And right now, I want to change the world by making people play more Fire Emblem. Just because I want people to understand the classics and see the love that they're worth, because I love Rekka no Ken. So anyway, in terms of all the waifu crap, that's the problem. Sorry, that's how I wanted to say it. I totally messed that up. I wanted to say changing the world seems great, and I want to change the world by making people respect Fire Emblem's like legacy, because the new games aren't doing that. Echoes totally did. Echoes totally was like exactly what classic Fire Emblem kind of felt like. It was totally different, but it captured, for me, it was like I was playing a Fire Emblem game. You know, I was trekking my way through the story and whatever, but I'm getting all caught off guard here. Honestly, we are working our way through all the different kinks, if you know what I mean. Now you can date your teachers. I mean, sorry, you're the teacher and you can date your students. Like, it's just, we're going all in on this. It was like literally borderline incest before, but now it's, I shouldn't even say that word because we're going to get demonetized. But that's okay. But I don't care. It's honestly the waifu stuff. I don't care about it, because fact of the matter is, support conversations in like earlier games were well implemented. They were really well implemented because they were like, you stumbled on them by accident, right? Usually it would be like in Fire Emblem 7, it would be like Eliwood and Lynn. They just happen to stand next to each other a few times. And like their first one takes like 7 or 8 turns. So you just like see it and you go like, oh, I guess I should check it out. What happens? And although those conversations aren't that exciting, I feel like the conversations with your other characters that you do like using, those stories can be kind of good. And then you realize they start doing better when they're standing next to each other. Hopefully you realize that because that's the strategy behind it. But it's not like it's only for the nerds who really want to read that stuff. But it's good because it does make your stats better. So there's a plus side to the whole thing. I feel like it's just become way overblown now, and that's the problem. So it's not what I care about when it comes to modern Fire Emblem. And to me, Fire Emblem games come down to 3 things. 3 things. That's the story. I know I said we don't really care about the story, but I'll explain. There's the characters. And this is the gameplay. Gameplay is very important. It's just the fact that in reality, the best Fire Emblem games are ones that balance all of these. And they can balance them in different ways. But if you balance it good and well, I should say, if you balance it well, it'll be a very good Fire Emblem game. So I'm going to talk about games that do certain aspects better than others. And I'm going to compare them to ones that were bad. And then I'm going to say how Three Houses could totally go either way based on the trailer and all that. And I hope this is a better idea than just watching the trailer, because I just don't think that's going to be great. So anyway, story. We'll start with the story. I know I said we don't care about the story, but what's important about Fire Emblem is that it's Dungeons and Dragons. It's like Dungeons and Dragons, except you're playing as all the people. Right? You are controlling all the people. Usually you're like some sort of tactician that just has the ability to move people and tell them where to go. And flavor-wise, it's kind of there. Right? That's in Genealogy, it's this dude named Oife. In Awakening, it was you again, and I didn't like that they started making you actually playable, because in Rekka no Ken, it was this dude named Mark at Fire Emblem 7. It was this dude named Mark, although you could rename him. And they just talk to you in the tutorial chapter and then never talk to you again. But I liked that they did it. And I know in FE6 there's another one as well. But he doesn't come up as a character. It's only Rekka no Ken. And in the other games, they just don't even really mention it. It's just like, this is just how Fire Emblem and it works. And the point is, it's like Dungeons and Dragons. So the story needs to be there. You need a reason for all these characters to be getting along. You need a reason for these characters to be working towards some sort of goal, right? Because Fire Emblem isn't chess. Right? If Fire Emblem was really like rock, paper, scissors, chess, which it isn't, because eventually, like for example, you know, like archers beat flyers or whatever, there's the handful of times where I've seen an archer with like hit a Wyvern Rider for like 14 because it's a Wyvern Lord and he's got tons of defense and he's got the even without the Philly Shield, I've seen some archers do like very little damage to a flyer, and it happens, okay? And like dodge tanks exist, and like late game, it's not really rock, paper, scissors. It really is like, look at how cool and strong my dudes are. And I think it's important that an RPG has a good story, because you're then excited to be like, oh, I can't wait to destroy this chapter with all my ripped dudes. And yeah, in short, these are RPGs, and Fire Emblem has made like, these are RPGs, and Fire Emblem has like managed to create all of its own tropes and all of that. I get it. Like characters like Jagan and whatever, and the way they work, and the story always has a moment. There's always in Fire Emblem a moment where the character stands before a crowd and everyone's cheering. It happens at some point in every single Fire Emblem game, except maybe like there's probably one where it doesn't, or it's like loosely implied, but it always happens. And it happens at different points throughout the game. Like they've never done it in the same place, but the fact that they can hit a lot of these tropes, there's usually some sort of dark magic guy who's behind it all along. Somebody dies along the way, sometimes a playable character, sometimes it's not. The fact that they've kind of managed to give you this formula story-wise, but can mix it up and add through the characters something really special. I think games that have done it very well. The good examples I have are FE7, because I just think it plays through a good flow. Lynn's character, she feels like she is part of it for a reason. Eliwood and Hector's like friendship is like a whole thing as well. I like it. And the fact that it's a prequel to the other game, and it feels like you're looking back on it, but in reality, it's like separate conflicts. It's very interesting because when you do the stuff that foreshadows what happens in the game that already had come out, it's pretty much like a side event to the whole thing. But then there's like the whole Black Fang. There's tons of characters who like matter to the whole thing. And it really just feels like, it doesn't feel like these are armies facing each other. That's what I like about, I like when Fire Emblem isn't about like, oh my God, we're an army. We're going to get in there. It's a lot more like, guys, we've worked hard together. We're going to work together to defeat this dude. We're doing this on behalf of our country, you know, whatever. These guys are being evil. And like, cause it's usually like there's bandits and these dark magic guys are chasing us and we got to stop them from doing the thing. I like that a lot more than what Fire Emblem's been going for recently with like it's a war between these mega kingdoms. And the Radiance games had that, but I feel like they did a much better job of having it as part of the story. Because I have Radiance games here, and here's like, I can't even remember it, but I'll replay them eventually. We'll get there. Okay. And I think Awakening has like a tolerable story, at least for that first part up until, you know, I think it's chapter 13. No, it's like chapter 9. It's really good. The moment you can start dating and marrying people and you go over to Valm, it all starts to suck. I'm with you all the way. But like, and then when you come back from Valm and you're like stopping Valadar, it's like, okay, we're back to Fire Emblem. Like it's good. Anyway, so those are the good examples of Fire Emblem games. Bad examples, Fates. I've mentioned it. Watch the video. It's just a very bad story and you don't care about it. I put Sacred Stones here, and I think it's just because Sacred Stones really hinges on Lion and Ephraim and Erica, and that's like the entire story. It's still okay character-wise, and we'll get to that, but it doesn't feel nearly important enough. I hate it. Like, I don't hate it, but I just like, I check out when I'm playing Sacred Stones. Let's put it that way. I laugh more at the game than I'm really like, oh, story-wise. I start reading Ephraim and Erica being like, oh my God, why? Brother, no! Like, I just read it as all bad. I don't like it. And Shadow Dragon, but that's just because it's old. Like, there's a story there, but I don't think anyone really cares, to be honest. I haven't met anyone. I think maybe the second one's better. But again, I still haven't played that one. I got to go to that one. So here's my thinking. I can see potential for Three Houses. I know I haven't really mentioned Three Houses throughout all of it because it's like I'm just going to play it. I'm going to get it when it comes out. And it's just going to be fun, okay? Like, I'm going to laugh at it if it's bad. I'm going to love it if it's good. And if it's neither, well, then it's not really Fire Emblem. I have hopes that it will be a Fire Emblem game, though. I'll put it that way. That it'll try some new things and it'll kind of work. So story-wise, I think it'll be a lot better than the whole Nor versus Hoshido thing, like completely, because there's three houses. So I'm thinking what I hope, because they were saying like decisions and all that matter and you get to pick your own direction or something. I can understand that each path might be like a color swap of the other one. That's how it's going to be bad. Like, you just pick one and then it's like the same either way. First you face the red dudes, then you face the blue dudes. That's because you picked the yellow one. But don't worry, the blue guys are actually on your side. But it looks, if you play the red version, the yellow guy joins you up instead. It's like, well, yeah, because we weren't going to team up with ourselves, right? Like, right? So like, if the story follows the same beats, it's just slightly different, that would be kind of boring. But it could do something well because we don't know how they're all connected. And I'm telling you, that house in the middle, like the church or whatever, that's like not correct. Like there's something messed up in there. That's where the dark magic guy who's been behind it all along might slide in and do it. And you just got to hope that the rest of the game has like good chapters, depending on which way you go. And maybe a bit more control over, like, maybe after you pick, you get to make more decisions on who you team up with. And you can kind of guide this choose your own adventure story. At least it'll kind of be okay, because then you can come back to it later. I think what's important, and I wrote this down, a Fire Emblem game is really good when you want to replay it. And I think that's very important, because Fates, that was the problem. They had to force you to replay it by buying other games to unlock more dudes. But in reality, it didn't matter, because they were trying to give you this mega end game, use your super dudes online and kick butt and share your castle around. And I was like, this is dumb. Why would you make... I don't get it. I didn't want to replay Fates because they were trying to force you to do it. But I've replayed FE7 so many times. It is such a good game. I love... Anyway, we'll get back to that. I can see Three Houses having the potential to have a story that's not as bad as Fates. And I hope it at least does that. That's where I'm at. So character-wise, there's two different types of characters in the Fire Emblem series. There's the tropey characters, which are like your Jagans, your Cain and Abels, your, Navarre. I often even name them after characters from Rekka no Ken. There's the Marcus, the Kent, and the Sane and Kent. The Will, your archer. There's also Rebecca, your like faster archer. Like I think of it all like that. But these people are important. They're a big part of Fire Emblem and what makes it what it is. Because like Fire Emblem is like a ragtag team of comrades that you've collected through meeting people. Because you have to go over to that house and was like, hey, come join us. We're going to stop the bad guy. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's stop the bad guy. Right? That's usually what it is most of the time. But what's important about it is that they have just enough tie to the story that it matters. That's when it pairs up and it works really well. But even if it doesn't, it can still work. It just adds to like the flavor of the whole story. If they just explain it like, oh, my kingdom's getting attacked, help. You have a reason for it. And maybe their characters and support conversations at least like dig into that a little bit more. They don't have to be tied to the story. FE6, I would say, does it really well because none of the characters are really tied to the story. Like they are, like Innes is I hate that game is about, they're from a different, like Prince, Erica and Ephraim are from a different kingdom, but I don't remember what their kingdom is called, but they were helped by the Renee's or Renai army the whole time. So they were off over there. Renee's according to what's it? Fire Emblem Heroes. I don't play the game and I don't want to. I can't play these gacha games. But I think, but it's like Renee's the whole time. I can't do it. I hate it. It's like Renee's the whole time, but they got like, you're talking about Renee's the whole time and they got Innes and like Saleh and like King Hayden, who I totally forgot existed. Like I don't like Sacred Stone's the story. And you don't care about any of the characters and where they're from and what matters and why they joined. You're just kind of like going through it. Larachel's the queen of that other kingdom. There's that thing with Joshua and Ismare. Like, I don't remember any of that. Like, I just didn't care. It was all so rushly explained. It was so bad. But so many characters are the trophy characters. Joshua is your long queue, but there's also Marissa you get later. So there's like other characters that you mixed in along the way. There's still like your late game pre-promote, which is a Pegasus rider. Or no, there's usually that's your Aston, Katria, and Paula. That's all three of them. They got those there. Gilliam's like your knight. He's kind of your Arden, but he's not. Or Bors. I think he's kind of your knight, but he's not. It's just they do it. They have all of it, but I like the characters because the characters are so dramatic. You look at Ross, like you take Ross and Lute's support conversation. What was it? Lute goes, well, Ross is trying to flirt with her. And Lute's just like, who are you? And he goes, I am the son of the great Garcia Ross. And she goes, that's a really long name. Okay, well, son of the great Garcia Ross. Like, it's just... And it's super cheesy and tropey, but if that's what you're going for, that's what Sacred Stone started to go for. But it was okay because the game was fun. Anyway, I put up with it then at the time because I often just skip through the cutscenes anyway because they all were really good characters. They were good units anyway. But then there's the story-tied characters when it comes to the storytelling, and this can kind of go like with making sure the trophy characters are tied to the story. But I'm talking about the characters who are the story, who the whole thing hinges on, and that's things like that's like your lords. Obviously, there's the main ones. But then there's always like side characters. In Genealogy, there's Eldigan. There's the villains. Sometimes they can be thrown in if they're good enough. Narcian did a good job in FE6. For me, in Rekka no Ken, there's Nils and Ninian who played a huge role, and it made Nurgle this like really mysterious character who you really only got if you actually stopped and read the cutscenes, right? I just think it's a really good story. It's really good. Shadows of Valentia, though, does do a very good job with only having two sort of main characters. They do a good job as well, with just Alm and Celica really being the only people who matter throughout the whole story, but you care enough about it. You care enough about the people along the way because it does start at such a grassroots level with just Alm in his hometown. I think it's a great way to really show his growth as a character. Bad examples, again, Fates. The characters were like trying really hard to be the same characters, but also were not. Like I look at Effie and I go like, what? Not Effie. Effie was hilarious. I loved Effie. I'm thinking of Charlotte. Screw Charlotte. Oh man, what was her character again? I just don't get it. I didn't get like anyone, man. People are like, I love Perry because she got bubblegum hair. And it's like, yeah, because their characters suck, man. It's so bad. Awakening was bad because the characters, they were tied to the story, but the story was so bad that you didn't care. You didn't really think about them. You know, I didn't like... Awakening sucks because I don't care about Flavia or Basilio, and the whole Valm thing, I just checked out. I mean, I always talk crap about it, but it eats up like a solid, and it probably eats up like half the game. Like, it's bad. It's, again, Fates is just too one-dimensional. Now, as for Three Houses, it could be okay. It could kind of be close to what Shadows of Valentia did, because I liked how Shadows of Valentia made it so that... I'm going to turn off my auto-rotate because it's throwing me off. It keeps distracting me. Oh my god. Phone. There we go. It could be like Shadows of Valentia just because since the characters can all be customized, your main characters, your main unit, or like some of the units they say, because you're the teacher and you're teaching them skills, there's room for characters to actually be like really close to Belith, the lord of this game, the dude you play as, which I'm not excited that we're the main character again. I don't like it when we're the main character. I like that we're the hangout dude. I liked Robin a lot more than I liked Corrin. And like, I think they have reason to be written. So there's reason for the characters to be written with purpose, not to be like, I'm the snarky Myrmidon man who can't talk to women. Like, cause there was like 4 of those. Like Long Q was like that. I swear Guy was like that. Joshua was good with the ladies, but he didn't. It was just, oh man, I hate it. But the story could be okay, or it could be like Fates. So I hope Three Houses at least lives up to having some decent characters. Seems like story-wise, it could have some characters that are really tied into it well. The trophy characters are going to be mixed in this whole different way. Yeah. So, I don't know. I just hope the yellow dude ends up upside down at some point, because like he's upside down on the box cover. I hope it happens within the story for a reason. I don't know why they got such an ugly box art for this. I hate it. Finally mentioned it, by the way. I didn't mention it up until now. And yeah, I forgot the names of the dudes already. I know it's Eldegard. She's like Axe Queen, so I mean, I'm going to do it. And then we get to gameplay. I actually didn't write notes for gameplay because I think gameplay is the most important part to Fire Emblem. To the commenter who said we only seem to care about the story and we should make a visual novel. Look, the gameplay totally matters. It's just that Fire Emblem has always been the same game. Fire Emblem has always played the same way. And it's important to understand that it's those little tweaks that they do along the way that come with big impact. And Fire Emblem did start to become a lot about the waifu stuff. And that's not good. But it's just the little tweaks along the way that add so much complexity to each game and how they play out differently, right? Again, it has to tie back into the story and the characters. So first and foremost, the waifu stuff isn't necessarily the problem. The support conversations before were things you just kind of stumbled onto by accident. In fact, some of them only take like 4, 6, 7 turns of standing next to each other. That'll happen by accident. And then you'll see the support show up and you're like, oh, what? Someone can support? And then you read it. And if it's interesting enough, you might want to stand those people next to each other again and you might want to read more. And if not, you don't think about it. But it's there. It's there. And it was just kind of like, you just kind of thought about it. Your characters were going through their own thing. In genealogy, it tells you in advance by looking at it. But other things that are completely hidden can happen, and you have to figure them out on your own. One of them is having Lean go to a certain house and dancing for them, and then you get like a super sword for her and stuff. And I think it's very interesting that you could do those things in genealogy. I think it's a very good implementation of that. But the support conversations were never a super big thing. The problem is that because the core game of just like your dudes and you move around and you attack and you level up, right? The D&D stuff is actually very easy it's a very easy system. The very first What Makes Games Unique Fire Emblem was talking about this. It was talking about how all the information is there to you. You know what's going to happen. It's just the fact that it comes down to a chance swing, right? It's like it's an 89% hit chance. And you're like, I'm going to hit him, and you miss. And you're like, how? I hate it. I missed a 10% hit. And it happens a lot with some games. In fact, I think that's why in the later games they actually had to change the system. And they changed the system so that it actually rolls twice. And if one of them misses, it doesn't get it doesn't count. Forget how it works. It rolls the number twice. And I guess it's I don't know. I think I heard something about how the random number generator works, and it rolls two numbers instead, and it checks them both. So it affects the odds. It'll skew more towards one to an extreme or another. And because it will 50-50s feel like a 50-50, but if you're at like an 80, it's actually like an 82 or something, right? And if you're down at like 30, it's actually like 28, right? Because of that, they did skew it more towards getting bigger numbers to make it more consistent. But before that, it was weird. It added this whole complexity to like the strategy, because if things go wrong and somebody starts missing or dudes start hitting when they have no hit chance, or the dreaded 1% and 2% criticals that just like kill your brain because you're just like, why? You had a crit as a 1%. How did this happen? And it makes you have to just start the chapter over again if you're like some people, or, like real people when we're playing Fire Emblem. Sometimes your dude dies and you just go, I'm really far into this chapter and I don't want to deal with this again. Good thing I had a save state. Or you actually just reset the whole thing, right? You just, that'd be a funny idea. What if I was streaming and people could donate to let me use a save state? That'd be a cool idea. I'd be like, thank you guys. You guys are the best. And if you don't do it, then I just go, well, damn it. Now I got to figure this game out. But Fire Emblem was really fun. Sometimes you're going through it and somebody dies and you just go, I'm just not dealing with that chapter again. I'm going to let him die. It's whatever. He's gone now. We'll train somebody else. Forget about him. You have to move on. And it's funny sometimes. I think that's what's fun about Fire Emblem. So that's why the gameplay is very important. I know I'm not talking about Three Houses specifically yet, but I just want to talk about like that's why Fire Emblem's fun. Because you're taking all these dudes and you're teaching them and you're training them, because you are leveling them up along the way. So the conversations help because there's also like the gameplay benefit to doing that. And if you're taking the time to actually train the people who matter, like the clear example is always like late game mage Nino over here, where you're just like, I'm going to train the crap out of her because if she becomes a sage, she just like wrecks house. And it's fun to do that, so you do it, right? It's the high magic mage, if you will. The high magic growth mage. Loot was the other one in Sacred Stones, and they gave her to you right at the beginning, and she doesn't care. She just destroys everything. And that's what's fun about it. That's what's fun about Fire Emblem, is that characters start to stand out for those reasons. And then there's the whole grinding stuff, though. Grinding in Fire Emblem has gone two different ways, and it's because of these two different ways that I feel that it's kind of been in limbo on which way we should really be playing Fire Emblem. The original game and like Genealogy and Thracia 6 and 7 all played through, you did a chapter. Gaiden didn't. Gaiden had like a bit of a map screen and there you could grind. Gaiden's a whole different game. Gaiden is much truer to the D&D stuff, but almost too much, I would say. What I like about Rekka no Ken specifically, because I keep talking about that one, I think it covers most of the spectrum really well. But just the fact that because you go chapter by chapter by chapter, you have to take the time to factor in, like, I got to one-hit that guy with Nino so she gets the most experience, and we're going to attack this person with another dude, and we're going to do all those things, right? It's important to do that if you want to train properly. It's the only way to do it. And if you know how to use the arena, you use Nini's Grace, and there's like a glitch in 7, which is what I like, that you can use the arena and arena scum if you want to, but it's a lot of work and you got to set it up And you get bored doing it sometimes because you only do like one battle every turn and you just give up at some point. I am very much of the mindset of let's try to send some dudes to clear out, and while we're setting up for the boss, these guys will be training over here. And that goes back to the D&D whole thing because it is true. That's what you're doing in Fire Emblems, right? I'm going to send some people over this way. I'm going to send some people over that way. You two guys are going to hang out for a little bit. You're going to go to a shop and do something for a turn. You two make sure you're standing next to each other. You're making all these little decisions on top of the fact that you're like, okay, you attack that guy, you destroy this guy, okay, you go there, right? I think of turns where a chapter that I really like is, again, FE7, the Battle Before Dawn. Night of Farewells sucks, but the Battle Before Dawn is really good because there's so much happening. It's a tough chapter, but there's so much happening in it. You got to start, you split your dudes up, especially if you're playing on Hector hard mode, you split your dudes up. Some dudes come down one way and try to get to Jafar as quickly as you can. And on Hector hard mode, Jafar might die, so you got to get there fast. Rescue staff, maybe. Get down there. The rest of your squad's going the other way. And they have to first go down that door. They got to unlock that door, which you can choose to like be aggressive and like have your thief sneak in, open it, and you just rush it. Or sometimes you set up outside of it first. Because it's a fog of war map and you can't see what's on the other side, you might like sit there for a second and ping some dudes over the wall. You might do that. And you gotta get down there and you gotta talk to Nino. Now, if you want to get to Night to Farewells, you gotta take Nino, who's really frail, and walk her over to where Jafar is, the assassin, who's super strong and is destroying everything. There's not a lot of hard dudes around there, but you don't know. You're walking through the shadows here in a fog of war map. It's super well implemented. Plus, you're protecting the prince, by the way. The prince is in the castle. I don't care about him because he becomes the bad guy in the other game. But you get there, and you have to walk Nino over to Jafar, and they have like this whole backstory thing that you're reading into. Like, it's completely unrelated to like the reason why you're here in the first place. But that's what's crazy about it. All this stuff happens, and it's such a connection to... It's a connection to 6. You got the Black Fang and their storyline in here. You have Nino. You have a really hard objective mixed into it. Like, everything about Fire Emblem is in there in that chapter. And because you have to grind along the way as opposed to going to some map screen. And I always talk about a map screen because that at least conveys what the grinding is. That's what Fates did wrong. Because Fates, if you play Birthright, you just get like these like challenge rooms where you just like, hey, do you want to challenge this group of dudes? Because you can. And you go, okay, I guess I'll challenge these dudes. And you challenge them. It's dumb. I hate Birthright, man. Never even played it, actually. I probably should. No, but I don't want to spend money. I don't want to spend more money on Fire Emblem Fates. I just don't. So, it was just really, okay. But to speak about the games that do the grinding stuff, like Sacred Stones, which does it very well. Awakening does it well enough. I feel like it at least plays well. Fates has more consistent gameplay to what Awakening had. I like that about Fates. I like that the pairing up, they didn't go on a percent thing, because if everyone's going to be married, you can't just make it so that all of them just become like unhittable. Now it's like if they stand next to each other, they do follow-up attacks. If they're paired up, they block every few hits. And if they're closer to each other, right? Like if they're S ranked versus whatever, all those odds like increase and like damage and stuff. Like it's better across the board. Well, the doubling helps like gain relationship points, and you'll probably get better stats going into it, but it doesn't actually make your attacking, like it doesn't make the attacking any better. I guess it just have better stats going into it, better chances for things to happen. But the attack hit chance is like a straight up attack. It's good. It's very consistent. You know what the game is. There's a lot more room for the enemies to make moves that you couldn't have seen. It becomes very position based. And that's really good to me. I think that's really important. If position matters, it plays really well in Fire Emblem. I think it makes a really good game, like when positioning really matters. And they managed to do that. Normally, the supports are the reason why you position a specific way. You work as a team, which I like. But I do like that Fate's made it really consistent, and there's a lot of ways to make an attack go. Sometimes you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to hit him, but I'm going to move you next to me first so that you can maybe get the follow-up attack. Because it's safer for that other person, right? If it's like your mage or something. And if the boss doesn't move, you put the mage 2 or 3 spaces away, depending on their range. And the person who's attacking them does damage, and the mage does a buttload of damage without putting herself in any danger. I like that. The Sacred Stones does that right. And the fact that the way you reclass in Fates is really good. With it's not the second seal anymore, because second seal made it so that you can just kind of like, I can be whatever I want, sort of. But because you use the friendship seal and the partner seal, I like that it opens up every possibility, but you can't have like all of my team as one class, right? Which is something I would prefer. I like having the opportunity to maybe make everyone the same class, but you can still do that, and it's limited though, which I guess is for the best. Sacred Stones is really good because the grinding is in one place. And it makes sense because you're on a map and you can go back and buy items. Going back and buying items is something at minimum worth having. But I do understand, I still like how Rekka no Ken, you have to like go to the shop while it's here or don't, right? Like this is your only opportunity. So you have to factor it into your strategy and your moves and your turns and your decisions. I just think it's all really good. I think it's all really good in Rekka no Ken. Now, as for Three Houses, I don't like that they're going down the whole war route again, but if they're doing that whole thing with like different formations and stuff, oh man, I think that's going to be really good. I think it's going to be amazing. I think that's really good. I think it's going to be a great game. Like seriously, I think it's going to be really good. I enjoy that. But yeah, I just think, like that could work really well. I think the army stuff could move really well with like positions and unit formation. That could be really good. It could work. It looks like it still just plays like Fire Emblem, so that's not bad. In terms of grinding opportunities though, I like that we are teaching people to be certain classes and learn certain skills. I like that level of customization. I like that we can be like, I'm going to make you ride a horse and you're going to use these types of weapons or something. You're going to use axes and tomes. I don't care. Can we do that? I hope we can do that. That'd be really cool. We're just making our own units now. That's a cool idea. That's a great mix to the gameplay, and I think it'll be really good. Or it'll be like Fates and like, yeah, well, I don't think it will. I think the gameplay in Three Houses is going to be the most interesting part of the whole thing, and I think that's why I'm excited to play it. The more I keep thinking about the gameplay, I'm like, I don't think they can mess that part up, right? Because they haven't messed it up. Fire Emblem hasn't really been messed up gameplay-wise for a while. There's 2 different dichotomies. There's 2 different ideas going on. But there's genealogy in what Shozo Kaga really believed, and Shozo Kaga was more, he would have made FE7, I think. He would have gone more down that route. And I gotta play Tearing Saga one of these days. But, and then there's like the Sacred Stones and like the high grinding, everyone can reclass, do whatever you want sort of thing, which in reality is like closer to D&D, but I liked having like a campaign. Like that was like what you're doing, like everyone's part of the story. How come I can replay FE7 and love it every time I replay it? Despite like certain levels being really difficult, but I have like my own sort of house rules that I like doing when I play the game. But then there's I like playing Sacred Stones, and I like building my super strong dudes, and I make them all a certain way. And like Sacred Stones was still pretty manageable because it was like split classes. You couldn't reclass or anything, luckily. So you can make it so that you have like everyone who can be a certain class will try to be that class or something, or you just try to make someone for every class. And even still, if you try to have one person for every class, you actually will have duplicates, because there are people who there are classes that would have already been taken. You just have to be specific for like Ewan needs to become the druid, and Noel becomes the summoner. Lute becomes your mage knight. You already get a sage as part of the game, but you can still make Ardor a sage if you wanted to, and then Molder can be your healer or your bishop. Natasha would be the troubadour, or Larichel could be the troubadour. Oh no, wait. Now Natasha needs to be either a bishop or a troubadour, or a Valkyrie. And those are already both taken because Larichel has to be a mage knight or a Valkyrie. So, I mean, the people you choose and the way you play the game can be so different every time you do it, which is why I can replay Sacred Stones. And Path of Radiance, I know that did a good That did a good job. The silly thing about Path of Radiance for me is I don't remember why I liked it, but as a kid, I rented it from Blockbuster. You had memory cards at this point, so you just re-rented the copy and kept playing. It wasn't like the N64 before where when you brought it back, you started seeing what the last people did with it, which was hilarious. I loved that. I loved that you could rent games with cartridge batteries. But that happened. It would have been the same way with Link to the Past and stuff on the Super Nintendo. You would have seen people's high scores and all of that and how far they were into the game. I definitely did that. Heck, when I played Ocarina of Time for the first time, I played against someone who had completed the game. Or I played with somebody's file who had completed the game. Willing to bet it was done with like a Game Shark, but still, like, thought it was cool. But yeah, I beat it twice. I beat Path of Radiance twice. I remember I loved the cutscenes, but I must have been so young at the time. I must have been like 12, 13, 14 maybe. I don't remember. I don't think I was in high school when I played it. I would think I was still in middle school. I don't know. I was in elementary school, but like late elementary school, grade 6, 7, and 8, around there. So yeah, I just think, you know, gameplay wise, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, at least it like, you would class up and then you can pick a new weapon that you can use. I like that option too. I like just having the choice, but I don't like having unlimited choices. Right? And that was the problem with Fates and stuff like that. Here, Three Houses can go either way. I think Three Houses could either go way super customizable, but they might be able to do it a good way with, if you limit the amount of teaching time you have, I think it could actually be really good. I hope it goes through like stages. Maybe it's like, maybe you have to level up while you're in school. Like, I hope there's like this whole first act of the game where it's mainly just like, we're going to be in school and we're going to be doing school stuff and people are training and we're all getting better at stuff and you're slowly figuring out who like the villain kind of is, who's the bad kids, which one's the bad house. And maybe it's based on the decisions you make and stuff like that. I think that could be really cool. And then the customization is happening along the way, you know, and you're being like, you're going to be good at horsemanship and you can wield tomes and something else. And it's like, that'd be cool. I always say tomes because I think adding magic to anything is fun. But I don't like having just general mages. I like when they can use other stuff. In Rekka no Ken and stuff, I like using mages. Well, I like using shamans. There's just not enough of them. I'm going to use Canis next time I play Rekka no Ken. And I think that's about everything. Three Houses, I'm excited for it, and I'm going to play it. But I can't get super excited for it. I just can't. So, I will say, so some last minute news, because the only people who care about this channel watch at the end, right? I'm looking at you, all of you. Hi, it's just you. I know you're the only one left, but, the Thracia 776 video is going to be on hiatus for a while. It's not going to come out for a while because I got a bunch of comments saying, yo, there's this new translation patch that's like 70% done. Wait until it's done and then use it. And I was going to be like, okay, I guess it's the best time to do it because the whole community would probably be looking up footage of that game anyway. So I think it's probably the best time to do it. So I'll wait until that kind of gets finished, even if it's a few months away, because there is a couple of other games that I've been meaning to play that are tactics games. There's one that's been long overdue and people have been asking for it. So I will be doing that eventually. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm going to do that one next, probably. I started playing it and it is good. It is a good game. We could just talk about some other games along the way, but also to fill the time, I decided I'm gonna get to streaming again, and we're gonna be streaming Fire Emblem 7. We're gonna beat it. We're gonna stream it live, and we're gonna beat the crap out of it. We're gonna destroy it. Oh man, I want to play Hector hard mode. We're gonna use all the fun people, and it's gonna be a fun time. And I'm gonna be playing that other game on my own time because I don't want to stream myself formulating opinions and deciding whether or not I like a game. Because sometimes I don't want to play a whole game. I don't want to sit down and do it, and I want to make that decision myself. But I want to play through Rekka no Ken again because every once in a while I'm just like, I want to rekindle it, and you'll see how much I love it and enjoy it. In fact, I'm streaming live on Twitch right now. At the very end of this video, I have decided that this is when I'm going to watch it. And yeah. So this is, well, sorry. I decided at the very end of this podcast was when I would start streaming, so we're going to do that now. So go hang out and come to the stream. We're going to be doing Lin mode to start. Well, we'll try to get that done as quickly as possible because I want to get the true ending once we get to the Hector part. But we could do it. We'll totally do it. We'll totally do it because I want to do it. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave me comments talking about other things to talk about on the podcast. I could do a whole episode of the podcast talking about the Rekka no Ken, maybe, or because I love talking about it. I can maybe get guests on. We can do a whole bunch of stuff, really. I'm trying to figure out how. I don't know how I want to do guests. In ways, I like the way I think because you have to be an overthinker to do it, and I'm just going to dominate the conversation anyway because I'm so used to talking by myself. Anyway, see you guys later.